Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. Believe it or not, it is already the end of October. So it is time for a monthly garden tour. And you can hardly see through. My hibiscus have grown so beautifully this summer. This yellow one had 6 blooms on it yesterday. But what I like to do is I like to just pan my garden from the vantage point of my back concrete patio, and then start in a different area every month that I do this. It really helps me see changes that happen in the garden. So I'm going to start back here, kind of in the corner. I have my little 4x4 bed, and I'm starting with my red porterweed. It has been a beautiful plant this whole, almost a year now. And it has just bloomed and bloomed and bloomed, except during the hottest part of the summer when it was above 100 degrees. And it just was dormant and just maintained. The problem is I have, it's so top heavy that it has fallen over. And it is also rotating in its pot, the root ball. So if you have followed my channel, you know I'm a huge fan of porterweed. And the reason I'm a huge fan of porterweed, for those of you that have heard me say this, I apologize, but for all of you who are new, the reason I am such a fan is because porterweed replenishes nectar all throughout the day. So you'll notice these bloom spikes are very unique and wispy and long. And although porterweed only blooms along a segment of that each day, these blooms replenish with nectar. And so they're visited by pollinators all throughout the day, constantly. And my hummingbird, the female hummingbird that we've had all year long, loves this red porterweed. So I'm going to come to the base and show you what's happened. So it has rotated this way in the pot, and I need to change that, and I need to stake it because it is blooming beautifully, but it's blooming beautifully all underneath here. Not that the pollinators can't find that, but aesthetically I don't like that, and I need to change this out. But this red porterweed has been such a stalwart in my garden. I absolutely love porterweed. And then looking over at my 4x4, interestingly enough, I have some volunteer Tithonia, and I've got 4 volunteer plants, and they are getting ready to bloom. And I'm just letting them go. Even though we have a cold front coming through and it's supposed to get down to 39. Wow. In October. That is bizarre for us. I'm letting these Tithonia grow. The rest of this bed is in the shade. I still have some of my John Fenwick phlox is still slightly blooming. Of course, the pentas are still blooming, except on this side. I'm going to be cutting this out. And my in the bed, it is time for my Rose of Sharon to wind down, and it is winding down, and the leaves will start to turn, and then it is deciduous and it will lose all of its leaves. The ageratum that I've had that was a volunteer, it loved its life, and it's spilling over a little bit onto the grass. Probably should prune that up, but I'm going to let these Tithonia grow. And just to see, I did not do a midsummer planting of Tithonia, and so I kind of regretted that, because now that we've had monarchs fly through and need nectar, they have been finding nectar on my other plants, but I will probably sow Tithonia successively next year. Okay, so that's my 4x4. I am going to turn my attention now to my tree bed. And my tree bed is coming back to life after well, I shouldn't say back to life. It maintained, except for the one salvia that I do believe, the Salvia Amistad, that I do believe died. But the Salvia Amante and some of the Amistad is coming back, and it's blooming. And my lantana has just been gorgeous. And I did a video on this, and I'll link it up on top. This mounding lantana, which is of the Bloomify series, love it and can't praise it enough. It has had both hummingbirds and bees and butterflies all over it. And in fact, the migrating monarchs I've noticed, and queens I've noticed on the lantana this fall a lot. So I'm going to go around the corner, or just around this bend here. And I did trim up earlier my Greg's Mist flower. I do have a video on this. It is highly attractive to butterflies, both monarchs and queens, in particular queen butterflies. And I will link that up at top also. I need to come out here and deadhead this so it will keep its blooms, keep blooming. But it's also grown up nicely in the Salvia Amistad there. And then coming back over, I have more of this Bloomify series lantana, and this is the color Rose, which has also grown up into my Kufia. Okay, so now looking at one of, this time of year is probably the best time of year for my vining plants that are passion flower. And I have two different kinds of passion flower, and I just love this time of year on how they are performing. It's like they're a blanket. Love it. I've seen some fritillaries out here laying eggs, and typically I don't let my vines intersperse, and I have let my passion vine come on over into my cardinal climber, because my cardinal climber has died back 2 months earlier than normal. This is what it looked like last end of December before the freeze, and I had a nice flush of blooms even in the beginning of December. But I guess our heat just stressed out the cardinal climber, and it said, nope, I'm done. And so even though I'm still getting a few flowers here and there, I'm letting my passion vine continue on. And this passion vine that you see here that's continuing on is the native passion vine, and it loves to grow horizontally. And this is cottonleaf passion vine, and it's fuzzy. And the fritillaries actually prefer this vine to the hybrid that I have, which is called Incense. And Incense is a hybrid with a native passion vine called Maypop, and I think it's a yellow passion vine. Anyway, this bed I call the trellis bed, and I absolutely love this bed. I've got different things planted in here. I've got natives and non-natives. This native shrub is called a Flamicanthus, which I do have blooms on the other end. Let me go down there. So Flamicanthus, as I have mentioned, is a native plant, and it has really gorgeous tubular, excuse me, tubular shaped flowers. And is this gonna focus? There we go. The hummingbirds love it. The butterflies love it. It is a host plant to the Texas crescent butterfly, which I have not seen, or if I have had it, I haven't noticed it. It's a very small butterfly, only an inch. And so I thought I saw one once, and you know, it's been elusive to me. But this is a host plant to that butterfly. And I absolutely love this plant. I get a lot of seed, and the seeds then will break open. I'll bring them in about, to the house when they're about like that. Not opened yet. And then I do put them in a paper towel and cover them because they do pop open with a lot of force. And this plant on the end in this pot was started from seed, this Flamicanthus. And it's had to, in the pot, it has had to compete with a couple of other plants, and so it's not as large as obviously as what I have planted in the ground. Flamicanthus you can heavily prune, and they will perform beautifully for you. Right now, the star of this bed certainly is the passion flower, and early in the morning, the native passion flower has its flower open. My hybrid passion flower does not. This is the hybrid leaf. And its flowers open up, probably mid-morning, and they're a gorgeous purple. Okay, so love my trellis bed. Okay, so I'm going to pan over down this way to my south bed. Another Texas native that you hear me sing praises about is the coral honeysuckle vine. And I love this plant because of the diversity, because of the wildlife that it supports. And it's a huge favorite of hummingbirds and butterflies and small birds, songbirds. I see birds in this vine also. Let me get close and show you the berries. Songbirds like these berries. So in the winter time, I really appreciate having this vine here. It's not really flowering right now, but the flowers the hummingbird absolutely loves. There's a couple of flowers. And even with the few flowers, the hummingbird is over here finding the flowers to make sure that she gets the nectar out of these flowers. So I've got this vine, and then I just recently did a video on the very back vine that I have way in the back, and you can see the orange cluster of flowers. I will get closer back there. But this is my south garden, and I absolutely love how this turned out. I do have, you see, I do have quite a few pots, and the reason I have not all, but some of my plants in the forefront here in pots is because this drains poorly. And because of this poor drainage, if we get a lot of rain, the water sits here. And so even though I have the bed built up, it just wasn't enough for some plants. So I have some of them in pots, and that has worked out very well. I'll probably now continue to do that somewhat. The thing that we are going to start an experiment with, and we actually saw a video on this by a British woman who really, really believes in drilling out the bottom of pots and letting the roots go down into the soil. And we, I think, are going to start doing that. So we're really intrigued by that, because that allows the plants not to be pot constrained, but pot protected also. So a couple of things to note. Look how gorgeous this my giant milkweed is. I am so loving the texture, the color. This time of year, it will yellow, so you will have some yellowing leaves that will fall, just like, any plant. But, oh, it's so gorgeous back here. Love my blue porterweed. Let me get closer. This is called a blue porterweed, although it probably looks purple in color. When I do look at the bloom next to my purple porterweed, I can certainly tell the color difference. And in the blue porterweed, these bloom stalks or bloom spikes are very much more narrow. This has been also a stalwart in my garden, and it flowered all summer long, even in the heat, in that awful heat where the other bloom colors of my porterweed did stop and just kind of preserve, and if you will, just shelter in place from the 100 plus degree heat. This thing bloomed, and I was so impressed with this blue porterweed. Okay. If you follow my channel, you also know that I am a huge fan of my firebush. I just had my little hummingbird come in and perch, and I'm going to see if I can zoom in on her. I do believe she's waiting to come down and take advantage of the firebush. Oh, I'm going to link up top the video I did on firebush also. I love this bush, and it is 7 feet tall. It grew 7 feet this one year, but it is the third year in the ground. So it has come up from the ground after our freeze each year. Kind of get around one of my giant milkweeds here, and it is just blooming and producing berries gloriously. So not only does firebush have these beautiful long slender tubular flowers that the pollinators love, they also have wonderful berries, and you can see most of these berries have been picked off by the birds already. When they start to get ripe, the birds are in here. They love firebush berries. Oh, and even though I just did a video on my Cape honeysuckle, the blooms weren't open. Let me zoom in. Isn't that gorgeous? Those are the blooms of a Cape honeysuckle. And Cape honeysuckle just starts blooming now in the fall and through the winter until it dies back in the frost, or if you have freezing temperatures. Gorgeous. So I'm back out now at my corner, and as I pan through here, I typically have my plants in pots, and they've been doing well. My Turk's cap is almost done. I'll have a few flowers here and there, but as you can see, it doesn't have a lot of leaves on it anymore. I do really like the blooms of Turk's cap. They're so pretty, and you can either typically get pink or red blooms, and then the fruit. Oops. I have grown Turk's cap from the seed, and that's fairly successful. And it does create seed. Pretty good amount of seed. Okay. As I continue, starting to get sunny, but my coral honeysuckle by my kitchen window here was a huge favorite of the hummingbirds this summer, and it was fun to have them come and get the nectar all throughout the day, and just watch them from my kitchen window. So as I continue on, I've mentioned in a past video that one of the big surprises for me was this gorgeous celosia. This celosia is called Dragon's Breath, and the part that was so stunning for me is, it started out just in a quart-sized nursery pot, and it has overtaken a tall, upright, very tall planter, and I love it. I love the color. I love what it's done. Very, very pleased with this celosia. I know the sun isn't stellar, but I do have a Terenia or wishbone flower that the hummingbirds still visit. And I have one thing that I do want to mention. My aloe vera. Oh my goodness. This thing is gorgeous. And right now what's happening is the two large aloe vera plants are getting hoisted, if you will, out of the pot, and the new ones are taking over. And this we've seen happen before. These will actually come out, and then this will take over and be the new, if you will, aloe vera plant. But it is just gorgeous. And then next to that, I have an azalea that I'm not too pleased with. It's always had some issues. I'm sure it's because of the pot I have it in, but it's starting to bloom, and they bloom in the fall and the spring. It's a really pretty flower color. Does anybody know what this is? Some type of leaf spot on it? Maybe a fungus? I do love the color, but I've never been super happy with my azalea. So anyway, love the color that it brings to the garden in the spring and the fall. Okay. So I came from this side, and now as I come over, you can see my trellis of cardinal climber is done for. But now I'm going to take a look at these two plants. But before I do, look at that gorgeous Swedish ivy hanging basket. Oh my goodness, it is putting on a fall display. It hated our summer of intense heat, but now it says, I love the fall. The blooming is gorgeous. All right. So over here I have my red mandevilla that I see is leaning, and my Mexican flame vine. And as I have mentioned, I had beautiful, gorgeous flowers on the Mexican flame vine in two complete large flushes in the spring and early summer. And then it shut down and it did not do anything. It grew a little bit towards the end of the summer, but it also hated the intense heat. I wondered if it was going to start to bloom again, and I do have buds, so I'm excited. I'm curious to see if it's going to have another big flush or if this is just going to be a small flush of blooms. But the Mexican flame vine has not caused any problems. It doesn't have any pests that I've had pest pressure on. It just hasn't bloomed. So I've noticed some bloom clusters, and I'll be excited to see what this can do. Okay, now I'm going to pan over to my shade garden. I'll be trimming back my shrimp plants this fall. They do need trimming, and they're just slightly flowering, not heavily flowering, and this is what they do in these warm climates. And I'll need to trim them back so we'll get a nice new set of growth for next year. Sweet potato vine is still looking good. I have mentioned the coleus is not, but it's still blooming. I thought it would have been out by now, but it is not. It is still blooming, and so I do keep this in bloom for the pollinators. And even though the blooms are small, oh my goodness, look at this. This coleus is called Big Blonde, and it's just, they produce these gorgeous sprays of blooms that the pollinators love. But my big hit now is one of my favorite plants, and that happens to be my salvia back here. So I'm going to go on the other side. And this is Salvia madrensis, also called forsythia sage. And fall is when this plant shines. Has the unique leaf, but it creates these gorgeous yellow bloom spikes or calyxes with these buttery yellow flowers. And hummingbirds and bees and butterflies love this salvia. And this is one of the few salvias that I have that starts blooming in the fall like this. And the bloom spikes will continue until I have severe weather. Isn't this gorgeous? Oh. Salvia madrensis has always been a favorite of mine because in the fall, when there's not a lot of things flowering, this comes to life. And even my two new salvias that I just planted this summer are just starting to bloom. Love it. This, incidentally, is one of my coleuses that hasn't flopped. And I have it planted in a pot, and it has done particularly well. I might have to come out and get some cuttings of coleus because supposedly in the next couple of days, I think it's Monday, we're supposed to have cold weather. push through. And by cold weather, for us, it's unseasonably cool for this time of year, and I think it's supposed to get down to 39 at night, which is very unusual here. And then finally in my north bed, there's not a whole lot going on over here. I do have a very pretty giant milkweed. I also have an unusual colored flower porterweed over here that's doing well. The cardinal climber over here on my fence is also almost done. Well, it is done. I have a few flowers here and there. But it is packing up and saying we're finished. Over in my north bed, my coneflowers didn't do very well this year. They did start to come back in the fall, so I did get a couple of blooms. But I don't know if it was the combination of the high heat and dryness that we had, or I should say drought. They did not do well. What did do well was my salvia. Both Mystic Spires and Misty all throughout here. So the salvia did well. And as you can see, my fennel has gone to bloom and it's done. And then on the end over here, the blue butterfly clerodendron has just bloomed its little heart out for a month. And it was also in somewhat of a holding pattern. And it's just bloomed all over. It's the blooms are finishing up now. But this has been such a highlight to see these cherry blossoms for the past 6 weeks. And of course, after its namesake, butterflies do love this particular plant. Well, thank you for joining me today. As you can see, the sun is coming out, the morning sun. Thank you for joining me in my October garden tour. I hope you all have a wonderful day today, and I hope to see you again.